Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today in our first video in our series, Living for 4-H Fridays. We hope you enjoy learning from Mr. Taylor today and playing in the soil.
Hey y'all, welcome to Living for 4-H Fridays. I'm your co-host, Taylor Jones, Alamance County 4-H agent, and today we're going to do a little container gardening. We actually have a repurposed livestock trough here that we're going to plant some herbs in, so let's get started. First off, you want to figure out what kind of herbs that you want to plant in your container garden. Today we have chamomile, purple basil, and some mint that we are going to spread out here in our container. And I like to do this because it sort of gives you an idea of where your plants are going to be living, and you can sort of move them around until you know exactly where you want them, and then you're ready to start planting. You want to also be sure that you have a nice potting soil when you're doing container gardening, because obviously all the nutrients for your plants are going to come from that soil. So you want a nice fluffy, crumbly soil like this here. But let's go ahead and get started planting. So we'll start with our purple basil over here. When you're container gardening also, a lot of times the plants that you buy may be a little root bound and in a shape. You want to go ahead and break that up a little bit, break up the roots some. This one is falling apart on us, which is just fine. You can see those roots there on that side, and then you can just find your spot and plant your plant right there in the container. We're going to do the same with our chamomile here. So you can see that one's pretty root bound. So you're definitely going to want to come through and sort of wiggle those roots out a bit, break them free a little bit. Sometimes, depending on what kind of plant you have, you may even have to use some pruners or something to sort of open them up. But you don't want to plant them when they're all wound up like that, because they can continuously wound together and not perform well in your container garden. So I'm going to just sort of tickle these out a little bit. And you can also shake it some, get some of that loose out, and then you can just go right in your container and plant it right there. And you want to make sure that you plant your plants up to the base of the plant. You don't want any of that root ball or the roots exposed, because then they can dry out, and that's not good. We've got another chamomile here. Again, we've got some roots that are root bound. We're going to open them up a little bit. You can sort of just massage them to break them open some. And then we're going to go right in here and plant it right beside our other chamomile. Make sure you get it nice and deep enough to where it'll perform for you. And then lastly, we've got our mint. Mint likes soil nice and dry. You don't want to overwater your herbs. Lots of herbs are actually Mediterranean. They're from the Mediterranean area, so they like, dry soil. This root wasn't too bad root bound, but we're just going to tickle it out some, shake it down, and then find a little spot in our container garden, and we're going to plant it right up. Mint also likes to spread, so we hope that this mint will spread out throughout this whole entire container, and our herb garden is complete. One thing to remember with container gardening is you don't have to have a big trough like we use today. You can use any size or shape pot that you want to. It'll just depend on what you're planting. Before you finish out for the day, you want to make sure you're always watering your container garden, especially when you just plant it. Even though we planted herbs today, you want to make sure that you water it thoroughly, and that way your plants will be off to a good start. Tune in next week for our first video of our animal science portion of Living for 4-H Fridays.